What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button because that is the most important thing you could do for me on this channel. What it does is that it helps to make sure that those who are subscribed to the channel will indeed get their notifications, and it also helps to push this video through the YouTube algorithm as well. Secondly, if you're new to the channel or maybe you've been ghost watching this channel for quite some time now, please do me a favor and yourself a favor and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And lastly, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms to your family and friends to inform them on this news and information. And it does also give me a slight boost in the YouTube algorithm as well. And with the introduction out of the way, let's now get into today's news. And today we are headed back to the People's Republic of Chicago because it appears that Emperor Brandon Johnson is once again attempting to hide money. He's attempting to hide hundreds of millions of dollars, refusing to be transparent on how these hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on the Biden crisis affecting Chicago. And get this, he's hiding these things and refusing to be transparent on a website that his administration created for the purposes of being transparent. He creates a website to be transparent, and in the website, there is no transparency. And a Freedom of Information Act is needed to get a little bit of transparency on what's going on. So this is typical Chicago nonsense, typical Brandon Johnson behavior. Let's get into it right now. I want to go through this article very quickly. Excuse me. And then we're going to get into a news clip. But first, this article from Chicago 5 News reads, or I should say NBC 5 Chicago. It reads, Chicago migrant website obscures details on where $300 million was spent, despite a city of Chicago website dedicated to tracking how nearly $300 million was spent on the migrant crisis. Many aspects of the migrant crisis remain shrouded in secrecy, most notably how migrant shelter sites are selected and how much building owners are profiting off of the migrant crisis. Those details remain largely hidden from the public, in part because of how the city of Chicago structured its migrant operation. By obscuring much of the staffing and operation work to private companies. But hidden from public view on the website created by Mayor Brandon Johnson's administration are details about how much those companies make in profit, what these lease agreements look like for developers and building owners whose buildings have been converted into migrant shelters. Through a series of Freedom of Information Act requests, NBC5 Investigates sought to better understand where those dollars are flowing. So now what I want to do is get into that actual news clip that goes into the investigation that was underway to find out where this money is actually going. Now, I will say this before I play the clip. If you want to watch the news clip in its entirety, the link is in the description box below. I did trim this news clip down a bit just to cut out the fat, but there is a lot more detail in it that you should know and understand as well. So once again, once this commentary is over, be sure to take it upon yourself to go in the description box below, click on the link to watch this NBC news clip in its entirety. I think it's very important for you to do that for full context of what's found, of what they found so far.
Now tonight, NBC5 Investigates continuing to follow the money, hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money spent on the city's migrant crisis. Now, while the city has created a website to track migrant spending, our team found there are still many aspects of this that are just shrouded in secrecy. Here's investigative reporter Bennett Haberly.
As migrants begin to move out of shelters, invoices are still rolling in. The city of Chicago spent nearly $300 million on the migrant crisis so far. But not much is known about how these buildings are selected or how much the property owners earn from lease agreements. Answering that is difficult, in part because of how the city structured its migrant operation. The city's migrant spending website shows more than $45 million have gone to a Louisville company, Equitable Social Solutions.
That's where a number of those leases are.
Mayor Brandon Johnson's office says Equitable helps facilitate and identify shelters through the help of another company, ReloShare. For months, NBC5 Investigates has asked for copies of the leases for the 27 shelters the city operated. Through a series of Freedom of Information Act requests, we received just 9 agreements.
That's important for you to pay attention to now. Number one, a Freedom of Information Act shouldn't have even had to have been filed because once again, if Brandon Johnson, if he's going to put up a website on the basis of being transparent about how the money's being spent, well, then what's the point of having to have people file a Freedom of Information Act? That's completely ridiculous, and it goes to show how crooked the Johnson administration is. But I want you to pay attention to the fact that only 9 out of the 27 lease agreements were revealed. And that's going to be important moving forward as we watch this, because you're going to see the astronomical amount of money that these building and property owners, I should say, are making off of the migrant crisis via the money that's being spent by Brandon Johnson. These property owners are literally making millions upon millions of dollars that they would not be making under normal circumstances, just operating their buildings with regular tenants.
Those missing include lease agreements for the city's largest and most expensive shelters.
Let me rewind that back just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay.
Through a series of Freedom of Information Act requests, we received just 9 agreements. Those missing include lease agreements for the city's largest and most expensive shelters.
You should not have to go through the hoops that you've gone through just to get to partial information.
I agree with him 100% on that.
Joe Ferguson is Chicago's former Inspector General. He's now with the Civic Federation, a nonpartisan government research group.
We absolutely should know at every step of the way where the public's money is going to, so that we can make an assessment as to whether or not it is being used well.
That's right-wing nonsense. You hear that right-wing nonsense that Joe Ferguson is talking about? He's talking his right-wing foolishness about how there needs to be transparency amongst the public on how the money is being spent. How dare Joe Ferguson, with his fake nonpartisan organization that we all know is really a right-wing MAGA propaganda front, that's asking, he's sitting here asking and trying to demand how the money is being spent and demanding that the people, that there's transparency, I should say, amongst the people. Sounds like right-wing nonsense to me.
What we do know after reviewing hundreds of pages of invoices is how millions of dollars have flowed to these companies for the operation and use of the buildings. Take, for example, the city's largest shelter in Pilsen. Housing 2,300 migrants cost city taxpayers $38,000 for a single night. That's $280,000 a week, or more than $2.5 million over the course of 3 months.
$2.5 million in 3 months. They're making $2.5 million a quarter, $38,000 a night. A night. Trust me when I tell you, nobody really wants this migrant crisis to end. Okay. When it comes to, the property owners and the people that own these facilities, and people like what's the one healthcare company? I forget what the company is called. It's called the Value Health or something like that. This healthcare company that's helping Chicago deal with the migrant crisis over there. I think it's called Healthcare Staffing or something like that. These guys are making tens of millions of dollars, just millions of dollars hand over fist. There is no rush for this migrant crisis to end. And I'm willing to bet you that a lot of these property owners and companies, even that are outside of Chicago, that are being outsourced, they're lobbying these guys in the local body, within the local body policy of Chicago. They're lobbying these guys to keep this influx going, keep it going, keep the flow of migrants coming, so that we can make tens of millions of dollars, and we'll break you guys off, a couple thousand here, a couple 100,000 there as well. I mean, because what's a couple, thousand when you're making 2.5 million a quarter? Man, yeah, this isn't ending anytime soon.
It's tough to say how that money was divided.
Also, as well, once again, the link is in the description box below if you want to watch the full video, because I cut out a lot. This one building right here, which is separate from the building that we're just talking about, this building here is reported to have made $17 million in 1 year. $17 million in 1 year. And my point that I want to highlight right now, going back to what I said earlier, when they discussed how only, I believe it was 9 out of the 25 or 27 lease agreements were released. These were the cheapest. These were the cheapest lease agreements. The most expensive buildings, the most expensive lease agreements, for the most part, are still hidden. We don't know how much these guys are making. These are the ones that are on the cheaper end of the spectrum that was released. Really let that sit in. That I don't need to say much more. Let me just play the video.
To say how that money was divided up. Equitable Social Solutions directed our questions back to the city. ReloShare did provide a statement, but it didn't answer any of our questions, and the property owners either didn't return our calls or would not comment. In response to other reporting that the city had months ago turned down offers for other potential shelter sites from the Archdiocese, Mayor Brandon Johnson pushed back.
All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Telling reporters the city is now working with the Archdiocese to bring one shelter online.
But it's not just as simple as, here's a building, take it. There's work that has to be done to build it out, to make it suitable.
But Johnson...
No, there are people that I have to make sure get their money that supported me on my campaign. That's what that is. So we just can't take any old building. You know, there are some people that, wash my hands, on the way to becoming the mayor of Chicago. And I got to make sure that I return the favor. That's what that really all is.
There's work that has to be done to build it out, to make it suitable.
But Johnson sidestepped our questions about calls for increased transparency.
We've seen the bed rates, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. I mean, I guess that's still the question that's outstanding. Would you support more transparency, more efforts to share those records?
Thank you for that question. Again, we're meeting you right where you are.
What? Let's listen to that again.
Support more transparency.
Let's typical Emperor Brandon Johnson response.
To make it suitable.
Typical response. Typical, I don't care what you're talking about right now response.
But Johnson sidestepped our questions about calls for increased transparency.
We've seen the bed rates, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. I mean, I guess that's still the question that's outstanding. Would you support more transparency, more efforts to share those records?
Thank you for that question. Again, we're meeting you right where you are.
You gotta love Brandon Johnson, man. That the reason that I call him Emperor Brandon Johnson, and I would often refer to him, I haven't in a while, but I used to refer to him as King Brandon Johnson, is because as you saw right there, this man does not care. He answers to no one but the DNC leadership team. Outside of that, you can ask him whatever you want to ask him. You can press him with questions however you want to. He's just not going to give you an answer. He will never give you a real answer. And at best, blame it on Greg Abbott. At best, blame it on Donald Trump. At best, blame it on right-wing propaganda. But even outside of that, like I said, you don't get any real answers from him. And he simply is not obligated, or he feels he isn't obligated to give you any answers because you elected him into office. I'm here now, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I'm going to ride this out the next 3 years of his administration. And that's it. That's the end of it, because there is no real method of getting him recalled. And that's unfortunate in the city of Chicago, a city like that, where there is no recall method to get somebody like him out. But you're stuck with him for now. Very unfortunate, but it is what it is. And that does it for today's news. So please make sure you hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video out on your social media platforms, and follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link is in the description box below, as well as pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you all for your time. And until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.